Welcome back to ITE 1932 Technical Writing. I'm Nisasri Silva, and today we will look at citing and referencing. This is the color coding that we will be using for this lecture and all the subsequent lectures. Please pause here for a bit and remember this color coding. Citing is a big deal in professional communication, especially academic communication. And we shall learn why and how we can do it properly in this lecture. One of the biggest reasons to learn about and engage in citing and referencing is to avoid plagiarism. So, plagiarism is the presentation of thoughts and works of another as it were yours. This would include copying or paraphrasing material without acknowledging, using another's ideas again without acknowledgement, working with others without permission, and presenting the result as if it was independent. Failing to put quotations in quotation marks and giving wrong information about the source of the quotation. And also submitting work that is already submitted before a previous semester or to a previous conference or a comparable entity. Now, the availability of text in digital form has increased the probability of accidentally engaging in plagiarism. When everything was written down or printed, you needed to have a conscious effort to directly copy paste, as in look at a document and then write it again or type it. But now it is a simple matter of two keystrokes, Control-C, Control-V. Now, when you are doing your literature survey or when you are reading material for your work, make sure that you record all the details of the materials that you make notes of. So when you write down something, on the side, write down where it is from. By all means, you need to use quotes and paraphrase materials, but you need to cite it. This is not telling you not to use quotes or paraphrase, but when you do, you need to cite. That is all that we are saying here. Now, what is a reference or a citation? So, it is the standardized method of acknowledging sources, and it gives the reader a way to uniquely identify its source. When you are using it in text, you will have a citation, and at the end of your document, you will have the identifications. That means a list of references. So, citation and references. In academic writing, you are obliged to attribute everything that you read to its author. So the requirements are like this. Anything that you get from another source without alteration should be referenced. This includes quoted text or equations, figures, schematics, table, source code, hardware details. Sometimes people drop some of this thinking that they are okay to cite. They are okay to copy paste without citations, but that is not good. The most important point that you need to remember is that your ideas must be your own. It cannot be other people's. So if you are putting in something that is somebody else's, be it text, be it an image, a graph, whatever, you need to give them their due credit. You need to cite them. Further on, why is referencing important in a research paper? You are giving credit to someone's thinking, writing, or research. You are acknowledging other people's work to avoid criticism and to accurately identify the source material for key concepts and ideas. This is on the side both of you, the writer, and the reader. It provides additional information to validate your arguments. Just because you say something, people would not believe you. But if you can prove that other peers in the domain has said the same thing by the means of citations, you have more weight to what you are saying. And it shows a broad understanding or familiarity that you have with the field. You know what other people have done. And if you are contrasting different approaches or results from previous studies, you can point them out, what each of these people have done and how they match up or contrast to each other. It's also good for giving serious attention. To use the authority of a key source to support your ideas. If you are citing a well-known or a respected article, people would know that you know what you are talking about. You have built your work on accepted norms or foundations. It shows the depth, breadth, and quality of your reading. As you can see, some of these have overlaps, and the depth, breadth, and quality of your reading definitely have an overlap with the familiarity with the field. Moreover, it explains contributions to direct the interested readers to their original sources. So it is to say, for more information, refer to this article, because you have article limits. If you are writing a paper, it will have page limits. You cannot write everything. You cannot start from the first principles. So you can point the readers to a direction of the original sources so that they can go and read them for more information. It increases and make it easier to access the knowledge that has been set forward by the previous researchers or your peers. When do we cite? And so if you have a direct quote that you need to reuse, you need to cite. If you have facts, figures, ideas, and theories, you need to cite. Statistics, studies, you cite. Interpretations, if it is not one of yours, if it is something somebody else has done, you cite. Even if it is information that you paraphrase, you rewrite with your own words, you cite. Things that you get from books, journals, internet, videos, radio, TV, lecture notes, you need to cite. So the source doesn't usually matter as long as the idea is not yours. The idea is not an original thought. You need to cite. Now, there are various ways of referencing or citing. It's a standardized system for referring materials. These are called reference systems or citation styles, and they are standardized by various professional organizations. And university departments or the library usually say what type of referencing or citation style that they accept. Sometimes they give you choices, sometimes they don't. And The same would go with professional conferences and journals that you submit. If you are submitting to something like IEEE, they will have their own system. If you are doing something ACM, they will have their own system, so on and so forth. Either way, there are two major classes. The first type is the in-text referencing. You would call it Harvard or author-date system. The other type is numeric referencing. An example is IEEE. Generally, you are free to choose from these types, but you need to be consistent throughout the document. You cannot switch in the middle. And also, you need to make sure that what you are doing is consistent with the place that you are going to submit this document. You cannot use Harvard to submit to a IEEE conference. You need to use the IEEE style. Okay, so the referencing systems, let's briefly look at IEEE style and Harvard referencing style. I'll be talking about both of these in some detail, but here we will look at a very brief introduction. IEEE is standardized by the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers and mostly recommended for engineering students or engineering documents. The Harvard referencing style is accepted in many universities, many colleges, and it is also known as the author-date system. Since words other than numbers go in the text in this system, so there are very specific rules for the textual citations. There are very specific rules for listing your references at the end of your essay. Now let's look at how citations work in IEEE. In IEEE, you would cite using numbers. So these are some of the citations in this paragraph. The numbers are given in the order of appearance in the article. The punctuation should occur after the notation. And the same source, if you reuse, will have the same number. And this number should be enclosed with square brackets. Do not say in reference 3. Instead, say in 3 it was found. And in IEEE, author names are not mentioned. And if you need to mention the author names, and if there are 3 or more authors, you can use et. And in case you want to mention them, it is okay to mention up to 6 authors, but as we said earlier, if there are 3 or more, it is better to use et. And when you are using et al, you use the name of the first author and you follow it with et al. This is an example. In 4, Jones, Watson, and Harris defined, so there are only 3 authors in this document. And here, in 3, Clark et al demonstrated that. So 4. There is another way to write this. You can say Clark et al 3 demonstrated that. It's a more easier to read way than saying in 3 Clark et al demonstrated, because in this second way of writing, even if you read the document without reading the numbers, it still makes a valid sentence. But that doesn't mean that you can drop the number. You, as the writer, should put the number there, but the reader has an option of skipping the number when they are reading. In IEEE, you do not include source titles, dates in the text. So what to do if there are more than one in a certain statement? What if many references, many documents are supporting the same idea? You can either use separated brackets or together, especially if there are a series, you will use a dash between them. Both of these configurations are acceptable. Citation should be in plain font. You should not do superscripts or subscripts or italics on citations. And the citation number should go right after its first use. Do not put it after every sentence in the paragraph, even if it is supporting every sentence. You need to refresh the first reference if and only if some other reference, some other citation came in between the usages of the same citation. What if you are citing a source within a source, secondary sources? So in some styles, like Harvard authority system, writer would acknowledge the original work in the text in text citation. For example, Anderson and Gary's studies of the auditory perception in the voice as cited in 1985. So you know what is the original and what is the secondary. However, in IEEE, you need to cite the original source. Now let's see how the reference list is maintained. Here is an example in the IEEE format how the three citations mentioned earlier is set up. There are many formats of generated citations, but here we are showing you IEEE. A reference should give the full identification of the source. That means there shouldn't be any ambiguity after reading the line of a reference of what you are referencing. So it is your responsibility to write it in the proper format so that there is no ambiguity. The reference list usually comes at the end of the document, and it lists everything that was cited in text. In IEEE, the references are ordered as they appear in order of the citation, not in the alphabetical order. Further, the square brackets are flush left and they form a column of their own. You have double space both within and between entities. So how to handle the titles of the documents that we are referencing in IEEE? Every important word in the title of a book, journal, or a conference must be capitalized. And on the other hand, if it is an article, paper, thesis, or book chapter, only the first word in the title is capitalized. And the title of an article, chapter, conference paper, patent, etc. should be in quotation marks. The title of a book or a journal should be in italics. Now, how to handle authors or names of people? It should be first name or initial and the last name. This differs from other styles where the last name comes first. You should name all authors and use only initials for the first names, or use the entire word "and" before the last name of multiple authors. So it should be A author, B author, and C author if there are only 3 people. If you need to indicate the page range, you use PP. If there is only one page, you use P. In the case of abstracts, it's most of the time only one page. If it is a paper or a chapter, most of the time it will be multiple pages. Now let's look at types of referencing, types of things that you would have to select. The first type is the direct quotation. Here what you are attempting is to reproduce a part of the original text exactly word for word. They are put in quotation marks, but don't you use them. Your text should not be more than 50% or 20% other people's quotes. Because in some cases, even though we are not emphasizing in styling, in some cases of conferences, journals, or other sources where they take your documents, they have very strict guidelines on how much of your text can be from other sources. So be very careful not to overuse this. But when you do use, you put the square brackets for the changes made. Here is an example. Einstein once said, if you can't explain to a 6-year-old, you can't understand it yourself. So for clarity, we are adding an idea into the middle, and it is not in the original quote by Einstein. So the reader would understand that it is something we added for clarity. In the Harvard referencing style, here is an example. Pause here and read it. Here is another example. Pause again and read it. Okay. Next type of referencing is paraphrasing. Here, we will be rewriting another person's ideas using our own words. It demonstrates your understanding of what you have read. And you should not change the meaning or drop important ideas. Just because you are paraphrasing does not mean you can change what it is all about. Here is an example. The same quotation as before. According to Einstein, to have a good grasp of a certain scientific concept is to be able to explain the concept to a curious child. See how it is in your words. Now, here is an example in the Harvard referencing style. Pause here and read. Here is another example. Pause here and read. The third type of referencing is summarizing. It is a more concise or compact form of paraphrasing. It only extracts the most important or relevant information. But you need to follow the same order ideas. This is an example to test your understanding. Try explaining it to a friend. Here is an example of the Harvard style. Here is another example of the Harvard style. Pause here and read it. Now that you have looked at several Harvard style examples, here is a summary and synthesis in the IEEE style. Pause here and read it. Okay. Now let's look at references and bibliography. It is the subject that you are following that would determine what you would be using. In some fields, one word is preferred over the other. So we are not going to say which one is better or which one is appropriate in this lecture. Refer to your own field and your own conferences, journals, or your library guidelines to decide what to use. In the Harvard system, references are listed alphabetically. And remember, in the IEEE system, they were listed in the citation order. There is a double space between references. Okay, now let's look at how various references appear. Here is how a book is mentioned in references in the Harvard style. Pause here and read. Here is how a journal article is put in the Harvard style. Pause here and read. Please note that there is no such thing as Irish Journal of Social History. It is just made up for these lines. Now, here is how an electronic journal article is referred in the IEEE style. Pause here and read. Moving on, here is how a internet document is referred in the IEEE style. Pause here and read. Here is how a book chapter is referred in the IEEE style. Pause here and read. Here is how a online video referred in the IEEE style. Pause here and read. Here is how a conference paper from the internet is referred in the IEEE style versus how it is cited from a conference proceedings, both in the IEEE style. Pause here and read. Okay, now let's look at various abbreviations that can be used in the IEEE style. Remember, given name followed by the family name in IEEE. But then you come into the problem that in various different cultures, the way names are organized is different. For example, in Chinese, the family name comes first. So you have to make it standardized as KY Lee here. There is an Indian name, Malay, Vietnamese, or Western. Be sensitive to how each culture would handle their names. And it is also possible to abbreviate the names of various periodicals. Here is an example of how to abbreviate an IEEE transaction or a journal. Okay, now there are multiple online bibliography and citation tools that can help you. We have listed a number of them here. You can try them out yourself on the internet. Okay, now pause on this side see if you can answer these questions. That is the end of this presentation. Remember from the last lecture that research is speculative and one must never miss an opportunity of quoting things by others which are always more interesting than those one thinks of oneself, according to Master Cross. We shall see you next time with the next lecture.